Welcome to part 2 of Let's Play Portal of Evil. We're about to turn to 310. Let's go there now. The camp, which occupies a large clearing, is a collection of old tents and rickety wooden shelters huddling around a central enclosure where pack animals are tethered. Sentries stand guard outside the circle of shelters, while others sit in the branches of the surrounding trees. They look tense and tired, but Gartax's return cheers everyone in the camp. You can see at once that very few of the people are trained fighters, although each of them, down to the youngest child, carries some sort of weapon, a flail, a pitchfork, or a broom handle. Gartax invites you to his tent, where he tells you that he believes an attack to be imminent, and confesses that he is doubtful whether he has enough armed warriors to defend the camp. He begs you to stay until his people are ready for the final stage of their trek out of the forest. Will you stay with Gartax and help to defend the camp? If so, turn to 132. Or will you insist on continuing your journey and walk away into the depths of the forest? Turn to 2. We're going to help to defend the camp. 132. Gartax is overjoyed. He calls a meeting of all the camp's inhabitants, and as you meet them one by one, it is clear that their spirits are lifted by your presence. As an experienced fighter, you are able to suggest several defensive techniques that Gartax had not thought of, placing tripwires in the forest around the camp and concealing archers in the trees, as well as organising some last-minute tuition in swordsmanship. The camp's cook brings you a hearty meal, and you have just finished it. Restore up to 4 points of stamina if necessary. When the attack begins, heralded by the tinkling of bells attached to the tripwires, all in the camp rush to the defensive positions you have arranged for them. You take your position on the perimeter. You can hear movement in the forest. Will you advance into the trees or try to spy on the enemy? Or will you hold your position in the defensive line and wait for the attack? We're going to hold our position in the defensive line, 370. For a few minutes the forest is silent, then an army of scarecrows lurches into the clearing. Once they were miners and southern tribesmen and goblins. Now they are mindless slave warriors, thin and pallid, wearing filthy rags, with no sounds coming from their lipless, shrunken mouths, and no expression in their staring eyes. The camp dwellers are petrified with fear. You scream at them to start fighting, and as the bowstrings twang, the battle for Gartax's camp begins. It is a long and bloody business. The attackers are as untrained as most of the defenders, and you find that by running from one melee to another, you can use your expertise to push back the zombie-like horde whenever it threatens to break into the camp. The defensive line holds, but the slave warriors do not retreat. The sword play continues until all the attackers are dead, a wall of corpses round the camp. Many of Gartax's people are wounded, and some are dead. You personally have come through without a scratch. If you decide to search the bodies of some of the attackers, turn to 200. If not, turn to 169. We're going to search. There's something that we need. Can find it. There we go. You examine the bodies of the slave warriors. They wear no armour or uniform, and their clothes are filthy and tattered. Their skin is pale, and their faces are almost blank. Some of them have actually lost their facial features, having slits instead of a mouth, 2 small holes instead of a nose, and deeply set eyes without brows or lids or lashes. Each of them wears a stone talisman on a leather thong round the neck. The stone is carved with unintelligible hieroglyphics. You find one of these strange soldiers still alive, although dying. You notice that his talisman is shrouded in black shadow. You move it from round his neck. It seems almost a living thing. You can place it in your backpack, remember to note it on your adventure sheet, and then either set off on your travels immediately, striding into the depths of the forest, or return to Gartax's camp. If you want to hang the talisman around your own neck, turn to 384. Do not do that. We're going to say that we have the talismans. Let's write that down. Talisman. Okay, so we can either return to the camp or go to the forest. We're going to return to Gartax's camp, 169. Gartax cannot find words to express his gratitude to you, and he is ashamed that he has no treasure with which to reward you. You assure him that his thanks are reward enough, but you also suggest that he might give you some provisions to sustain you on your travels. He readily agrees, and soon your backpack is bulging with bread, cheeses, and salted meats, enough for 5 meals. So we have... So we're up to 7 now. Note these on your adventure sheet. All the camp dwellers gather to wave goodbye as you stride off into the depths of the forest. Turn to 2. Yeah, you don't want to put the thing around your neck. I think that's the end of the game if you do that. You turn into a slave warrior and that's it. You find a broad-limbed tree that looks easy to climb, and you clamber up to the highest boughs in order to establish your whereabouts in the forest. If you want to eat a meal and regain lost stamina, you can do so here, perched on a branch. Remember to note the changes on your adventure sheet. From your vantage point, you survey the landscape. Now you have to decide in which direction to travel. To the west, the forest thins, and you can see a wide track leading towards Klein Castle. If you want to go to the town next, turn to 143. To the south, the forest stretches into the distance like an endless green carpet. If you want to head south, turn to 155. To the east, the vegetation rises up the foothills of the cloud-high mountains, and in the distance the peaks form a jagged, bleak horizon. Beneath the mountains are the mine workings. If you want to take this direction, turn to 22. We want to go through the vegetation to 155. We can go to Klein Castle later, and we can also go to 22. Pretty much there's an order. This thing is the ultimate. That's the start where you start to get near the portal. You can go to the town first, but before you go to the town you want to go through here, because the town is easier if you go here first. So eventually this one eventually leads to that, which eventually leads to that. So you want to go to 155 first. You set off southwards, trying not to deviate from your chosen course. The forest seems empty of living things, and your progress is impeded only by the woodland itself. You have to cut your way through brambles, scramble up and down ridges, and wade across rushing streams. Finally, you come to a stream that you cannot cross on foot. You will have to follow its course until you come to a fording place. Will you walk upstream in a northeasterly direction, or do you prefer to go downstream towards the southwest? If you remember, we want to go downstream because Gartax said that's where the wizard lives. So we want to go to the southwest to 57. Because we have to find the wizard. He's very important. The stream runs along the bottom of a valley, and as you follow its course, the sides of the valley grow steeper and higher until you find yourself in a deep gorge. The cliffs that rise vertically from both banks of the swiftly flowing brook block out most of the daylight. You are on the west bank, where a narrow path runs alongside the watercourse. At the next bend in the river, your path is squeezed between the cliff and the water, and at that point there is a large cave in the cliff face. You cannot cross the stream here, so you must either continue along the path past the cave mouth, or attempt to climb out of the ravine. We are going to go to 365. There are fissures in the face of the cliff that serve as hand and footholds, but the cliff is both high and steep, and the climb will tax your strength and staying power. Add together your skill and stamina. Roll one die 6 times. If the total of the die rolls is equal to or less than your skill and stamina combined, turn to 196. Otherwise, deduct your skill and stamina total from the die roll, make a note of the result, and turn to 288. Okay, so what do you have to do? Add together your skill and stamina. So that's 25. And roll 1 die 6 times. If the total of your die rolls is equal to or less than your skill and stamina combined, turn to 196. I think that's the one we want, so we need to roll we need to roll 1 die 6 times, and then hope that it's less than or equal to 25. Is that right? Yeah, less than or equal to 25. I think this is one we want. But either way, it'll be what it is. Okay, that's 3. That's up to 7. That's 8. 14. So 2 more. 19. 22. So it's equal to or less than our skill and stamina. So 196. I hope this is the good one. Otherwise, there'll be something bad. Is that the one I want? No, next one. Just as you feel that your aching muscles cannot bear your weight any longer, your fingers touch grass instead of rock. You have reached the top of the cliff. You lever your body upwards and collapse on a patch of green sward, a natural clearing in the forest that elsewhere grows to the cliff's edge. A path crosses the clearing. You hear movement in the undergrowth, but you cannot conceal yourself. You keep very still. A goblin, frail and limping, lurches out of the forest and along the path. Only a few paces behind him is the biggest giant spider you have ever seen, clicking its mandibles and rattling its 8 furry legs. On this clear terrain, the spider will catch up with the goblin within seconds. If you keep still, the spider will pounce on the goblin, bite him, enfold him in sticky strands of web, and drag him into the forest. You can then continue your journey downstream along the cliff-top path. If you want to do this, turn to 399. If you'd rather draw your sword and attack the spider, turn to 67. What do we want to do? What should I do here? I think I'm going to let the spider eat the goblin. So 399. We're not going to attack the spider. It's difficult to remember what to do here. The pathway continues with a slight downhill slope, taking you through stretches of dense forest and grassy clearings. You are able to catch glimpses of the stream below. You notice that as you progress, the cliffs become less steep and the ravine less deep. Finally, the cliffs peter out, and your path joins the one that runs along the bank of the stream. Turn to 15. The stream has now become a wide river, curving through flat forest land of ancient green trunks that rise majestically as far as the eye can see, out of dense brambly undergrowth. Your path clings to the western bank of the river, and eventually you find some evidence of habitation. An old wooden jetty juts out across the shallows. Moored to it are 2 boats, a flat-bottomed punt with a long pole, and a skiff with oars. A track leads from the jetty into the woods, where you see a hut. It occurs to you that boating downstream would be quicker and easier than walking. Would you take a boat, turn to 166, or would you go to the hut and knock on the door? We're going to go to the hut. What was that? 275. Where is it? There it is. The door opens before you have time to knock on it twice. From the darkness inside the hut, 4 eyes gleam at you. 2 of them belong to a grim-looking dwarf. The other 2, even more belligerent, are those of a white parrot-like bird sitting on the dwarf's shoulder, its long tail feathers curled round his neck. The dwarf is holding a long poled boat hook, which he pushes up to your throat. "I'm the boatman," he says. "What are you after?" You ask for passage down river. You say that you will pay in coin or in hard work. The dwarf is not interested. "What's the use of money? There's nothing to buy any more, and I don't want to take off down that river. Now, if you've got some grub, why, I'd sell you one of me boats for a decent meal. We haven't eaten in days, have we, Pole?" If you want to give him some of your provisions in return for a boat, turn to 323. If not, the dwarf stands guard over his boats as you continue your journey along the riverside path. We're going to give him some food. 323. You open your backpack and give the dwarf enough food for a good meal. Deduct 1 provision from your adventure sheet. Down to 6. The dwarf begins to push chunks of dry bed into his mouth with machine-like speed and regularity. When he slows down, he remembers to crumble some of the food for his pet bird. Between mouthfuls, he manages spurts of conversation. "Been here since the early days of the gold diggings, never known it so quiet. Time was we had nothing to worry about but the goblins and a few raiders from down south. Now there's beasts in the woods bigger than I've ever seen, and things that come up to the door of a night and talk with human voices, but they're not human. And they're mad fighters with the shriveled up faces and staring eyes. I keep myself locked in here. But if you want to go off down the river, that's your lookout. Take whichever boat you like and watch out for the rapids. The skiff will break up for sure on the rocks, and you'll be lucky to get over in one piece, even in the punt." You thank him for the advice and go to untie a boat. Make a note of which one you take. Turn to 227. We're going to take the punt, so let's write that down. Just write it here. We took the punt. Okay, we're going to 227. You push off from the bank and sit down in the swaying boat. When you reach the centre of the stream, you find that the cross currents cease and the flowing waters take you gently in a southwesterly direction. You relax and enjoy the trip as the river gradually veers to the south and you drift peacefully past the vast slumbering forests that crowd the banks. You hear splashing and, looking ahead, you see a commotion in the water near the left bank, where the surface is otherwise calm. Will you manoeuvre the boat eastwards towards the left-hand bank to get closer to the disturbance, or will you let the boat continue to drift with the current in the middle of the river? We're going to let it continue to drift. 25. The river is now broad and slow moving, and it is taking you in a southerly direction. As you drift along, you have time to eat a meal from your provisions if you want to, store up to 4 points of stamina, and to gaze at the scenery. Both banks are still thickly forested, but the undergrowth appears to be less dense and to consist mainly of vines and creepers. If anything, the trees are even more massive than those in the forest further north, with wide glossy leaves. You think that open glades in the forest are becoming more frequent as you travel further south. Eventually you notice that the flow of the river has become faster. At the same time, you see the first signs of humanoid life since you took the boat. There are wooden jetties ahead, one on each bank. You can now manoeuvre your boat to one side or other of the river to reach one of the jetties, or you can stay in midstream. Will you steer to the right towards the west bank, continue in the centre of the river, steer to the left towards the east bank? We're going to go to the west bank, steering to the right. So 382. The boat bumps against the timbers of the jetty. You throw a loop of rope over a bollard as you climb onto the planking. An overgrown path leads away from the jetty into the forest. You force a way along the path, and soon you can see between the trees a stone tower. The path turns to the left and continues southwards through the forest. A side track leads towards the tower. Dusk is approaching. Soon you will need to make camp for the night. Will you go to the tower to see if it can provide shelter, or will you continue along the path and look for a suitable bivouac in the forest? I think we want to go to the tower. So let's go there, because I think there's something there we need. So 99. Well, something, well, we don't need it per se, but it helps a lot. Although we can complete the game without it. The tower looks abandoned and derelict. It stands in a clearing which the forest has begun to repossess. Solidly built of blocks of stone, it has 4 stories, of which only the topmost has started to crumble. Ivy clings to its pitted walls. There are no openings, not even an arrow slit, in the ground floor. A flight of stone steps leads up to the only doorway in the first floor. Higher up there are narrow windows indicating the position of the second story, and you can see that the top story was a belvedere with wide arches supporting a domed roof that has started to collapse. You climb the steps and look through the doorless entrance. Arrow slits provide a little light. There is one large room, dry, dusty and empty. It looks like a good place to spend the night. A trapdoor is set into the centre of the floor. If you desire to lift it and inspect the cellar, turn to 129. If not, turn to 359. I think there's something nasty in the cellar, so we're not going to go there. 359. Hugging one wall of the empty first floor room is a stone staircase that leads to a trapdoor in the ceiling. You assume that this provides access to the second story of the tower. If you decide to climb the staircase and push up the trapdoor, turn to 269. If not, turn to 109. We're going to go up the trapdoor, 269. Cautiously you push up the trapdoor and look around. This level also consists of one large room. It seems to have been the living quarters of whoever inhabited the tower. All that remains of the furniture is a bed and a chest. The chest contains robes embroidered with arcane symbols. Smaller items have been removed. You find hooks on the walls where pictures once hung. Under the bed you find the stub of a thick candle, which you put in your backpack. That's the important thing. We need the candle stub. So make sure you keep that. That's what we need. There is a window in each of the 4 walls. Looking west, you see that the forest thins, and beyond there is scrubby steppe, ending in the far distance at mountains silhouetted against the sunset. Northwards, the river down which you boated disappears into the forest. To the east, the foreground is dominated by a rocky eminence on the far bank of the river, stained pink by the setting sun. It is surmounted by a stone hut. At the foot of the crag, the river joins another waterway, and their combined flow foams down ferocious rapids as they speed south. In that direction, beyond the forest, you can see a vast expanse of still water lit by the sun's last rays. You can see no way to reach the top story of the tower. If you decide to stay in the dark and look for one, turn to 183. If you decide to return to the first floor room, turn to 109. We're going to stay in the dark, 183. In increasing darkness you wander around the room, feeling for secret doors or hanging ropes. You find absolutely nothing. A ray of moonlight creeps in through a window, but provides no help in your search. Then, as you are about to give up, you notice a glimmering shape where the moon's glow crosses the centre of the room, and as you watch, a ladder takes shape, glittering and insubstantial, stretching from floor to ceiling. You touch it with your sword, and your sword passes through it as if through empty air. This ghostly ladder is clearly the handiwork of a wizard or an illusionist. If you try to climb it, turn to 290. If you think it would be wiser to go back downstairs and get some sleep, turn to 109. Okay, we're going to climb it, 290. You reach out to feel the silvery filaments that outline the sides of the spectral ladder. Your fingers touch nothing, but a searing pain rips through your body, and you cannot move your hands from the moonlit object. Deduct 2 points from your stamina. So down to 13. Really wish I didn't have such low stamina. The pain passes, you shake your head, look again at the ladder, and it is now clearly made of real solid wood. You test a rung, it takes your weight. You mount to the ceiling, where you find a concealed trapdoor. You push it open and climb through to the tower's top story. You are in a belvedere, a once beautiful viewing platform with graceful open arches supporting a high domed roof. The stonework is deteriorating. Chunks of the roof and the parapet are missing. The shattered remains of the furniture have been gathered together in a corner. The heap looks almost like an enormous bird's nest, and just as you start to approach it, you hear the flapping of huge wings. If you decide to leave at this point, you can descend to the first floor room, turn to 109. If you prefer to wait for the nest's owner, turn to 53. We're going to wait for the nest's owner, 53. That's what's there. The heap of broken furniture is a nest. Inside it is a large egg, and scattered about a total of 10 gold pieces. You can take the egg or the coins or both and put them in your backpack, but not without a fight. Okay, so we have 10 gold. Well, we have the egg. And we have 10 gold. So gold, 10. The tower shudders as two huge talons grasp the parapet of the belvedere, and a nightmarish creature emits a scream of rage as it sees you. It is a pteranodon, a long-extinct flying saurian. It stalks towards you, its scaly wings outstretched almost across the full width of the room, its toothless beak wide enough to swallow you whole. You will have to fight it. If you kill it, you climb over its body and return to the empty first floor room of the tower. Okay, so 5, 8. Pteranodon. Alright, let's do this. Let's fight this creature. Okay, 2 dice. Let's go. Okay, 8 and 5 is 13. I get 10 and 2, which is 12. So it wins. So 13 and 12. Whoops, not 132. So it just gets a hit in. Wonderful. Okay, next. Gets a 4. Now I get a 9. That's 9 and 19. So 9, 19, and it goes down to 6. Next. Gets an 8, that's a 13, and I get a 6, that's a 16. So 13 to 16. Goes down to 4. Can't believe I got a hit in. 2, that's a 7 in total, and I get 11, that's 21. So 7 to 21. So that's 2. Hopefully the last hit I need. It's a 12, that's a 17 in total. And I get a 9, that's a 19, so 17 to 19. And that is that, I just win. Good. So that's the end of the Pteranodon. And now we go to 109. It is now dark, and you decide to make camp in a corner of the first floor of the tower. You are very hungry and in need of some sustenance. You must eat 1 meal from your provisions or lose 4 points of stamina. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We must eat or we're going to lose some stamina, so down to 5. We don't gain any stamina, unfortunately. Your sleep is undisturbed and you wake at dawn. You leave the tower and return to the path, following it southwards. Turn to 36. The trees of the forest are now so thinly spread that you feel conspicuous as you stride southwards through the grass that grows everywhere between the trees and on which herds of animals imperturbably graze. You hear the river to your left, and on your right you glimpse distant sun-baked plains beyond the trees. You hear hoofbeats. There is little cover, and you are spotted by the riders. 5 southerners in flowing robes galloping towards you on horned, cloven-footed ponies. Will you stand and wait for them to reach you, or will you run, hoping either to outdistance them or to find a refuge? On that note, I'm going to end the video on a little cliffhanger. And I'll decide what to do well, I already know what I'm going to do, but I'll decide what to do. I'll tell you my decision in the next part. Thank you for watching, and bye bye.